The Grandview Hotel had stood at the corner of Maple and Fifth Street for over 80 years. Its Art Deco facade had witnessed everything, from Jazz Age celebrations to wartime blackouts, from economic booms to devastating recessions. But nothing in its long history compared to what happened on the night of October 23rd. Sarah Mitchell had been working the night shift at the front desk for 3 years. She'd seen it all: drunk wedding guests, cheating spouses sneaking through side exits, even a minor celebrity trying to check in under a fake name. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. It was 11:47 p.m. when she noticed the old rotary phone behind the desk, the one connected to the internal room system, beginning to emit a faint crackling sound. She frowned. That phone hadn't rung in months. Most guests used their cell phones now, and the few who did call the desk used the modern system. At exactly midnight, the phone erupted into a shrill, ear-piercing ring. Sarah jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the receiver. "Front desk, how may I help you?" Static. Heavy, oppressive static that seemed to carry weight, as if the silence itself had texture. Then, a voice. Thin, desperate, barely human. "Please, don't open the door." Sarah's blood ran cold. "I'm sorry, who is this? What room are you calling from?" More static. Then, clearer this time. "Room 306. Please, for the love of God, do not open this door. No matter what you hear. No matter who asks. Promise me." Sarah's finger instinctively moved to the computer screen, pulling up the room directory. Her eyes scanned the list. Room 301, 302, 304, 305, then 307. There was no room 306. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake. There is no room 306 in this hotel. Perhaps you meant, listen to me." The voice exploded through the receiver, no longer weak but filled with raw terror. "I don't have much time. Room 306 exists. Third floor, between 305 and 307. They sealed it. They thought that would be enough. But it's not. It's never enough. The door must stay closed. Do you understand? The door must stay closed." The line went dead. Sarah sat frozen, the receiver still pressed against her ear, listening to the dial tone. Her heart hammered in her chest. She slowly replaced the phone and stared at the computer screen. No room 306. But she'd been working here for 3 years. She'd walked past the third floor countless times during her rounds. Had she ever noticed anything strange between rooms 305 and 307? She couldn't remember. And that, somehow, was the most terrifying part of all. Sarah knew she should ignore it. Every instinct screamed at her to finish her shift, go home, and forget this ever happened. But curiosity, that deadly, human curiosity, had already sunk its hooks deep. At 12:30 a.m., she grabbed the master keycard and the heavy flashlight from the security drawer. The hotel was quiet. Only 12 rooms were occupied that night, and most guests were asleep. She told herself she was just doing a routine security check. Nothing unusual about that. The elevator ride to the third floor felt longer than usual. The old mechanism groaned and creaked, and Sarah found herself holding her breath. When the doors finally opened, she was greeted by the familiar hallway. Burgundy carpet, cream-colored walls, brass room numbers gleaming under warm lighting. She walked slowly, counting. 301, 302, 303, 304, 305. Then she saw it. Between rooms 305 and 307, there was a section of wall that looked wrong. The wallpaper pattern didn't quite match. The color was slightly different, as if it had been replaced years ago and faded differently from the rest. And there, barely visible beneath layers of paint and paper, was the outline of a door. Sarah's hand moved forward, almost of its own accord, fingers tracing the rectangular seam. It was real. Room 306 had existed. Someone had walled it over. She pressed her ear against the wall. Silence. No, not silence. Something else. A faint humming, like the vibration of electricity through wires, or the distant sound of breathing. Her phone buzzed, making her nearly scream. It was a text from Marcus, the security guard who was supposed to be doing rounds on the first floor. "You okay up there? Saw you took the elevator to 3. Everything good?" Sarah typed back quickly. "Yeah, just checking something. Be down in a minute." But she didn't move. She couldn't. Her eyes were fixed on that wall, on the ghost of a door that shouldn't exist. That's when she heard it. A knock. From inside the wall. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Sarah ran. She didn't care how it looked. She sprinted down the hallway, jabbed the elevator button repeatedly, and when it didn't come fast enough, she took the stairs 2 at a time. By the time she burst into the lobby, Marcus was already on his feet. Whoa. Sarah, what happened? She couldn't speak. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Marcus guided her to a chair, brought her water, and waited until her hands stopped shaking enough to hold the cup. There's something on the 3rd floor, she finally managed. Room 306. It's walled over, but something, is inside. Marcus's expression changed. The concern morphed into something else. Recognition. Fear. You heard the stories, didn't you? He said quietly. What stories? Marcus, what the hell is going on? He sighed, running a hand over his face. I've worked here for 15 years. Long enough to know that some doors stay closed for a reason. Did you get a phone call? Sarah's eyes widened. How did you know? Because it happens. Not often. Maybe once every few years. Always at midnight. Always from room 306. He paused. And everyone who's received that call has been warned the same thing. Don't open the door. But why? What's in there? Marcus walked over to a locked filing cabinet in the back office. He pulled out a key that hung around his neck. Sarah had always assumed it was for his car, and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside was a single manila folder, yellowed with age. The manager before last gave me this on his final day. Told me to keep it safe, and only to show it to someone if they needed to know. I think you need to know. He handed her the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and handwritten notes dating back to 1973. The headline of the first clipping made Sarah's stomach drop. She read on, her horror growing with each word. On November 14, 1973, a man named Richard Alderman checked into room 306. He was a traveling salesman, unremarkable in every way. But when housekeeping entered his room 3 days later, they found him dead in the bathtub. His wrists were slashed, and the room was covered in strange symbols drawn in his own blood. But that wasn't the worst part. On the wall, written in those same crimson letters, were the words, I let something in. Don't let it out. The police investigated but found nothing conclusive. Alderman had no history of mental illness, no known enemies, no reason to take his own life. The case was closed as a suicide, but the hotel staff knew better. Strange things began happening in room 306. Guests reported hearing whispers in the walls, seeing shadows that moved independently of any light source, waking up to find themselves unable to move while something stood in the corner of the room, watching. 3 more deaths occurred over the next 2 years. Not suicides, not murders, but accidents. Falls in the bathroom. Heart attacks in the middle of the night. A young woman found suffocated in her sleep, her face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. In 1976, the hotel's owner at the time made the decision. Room 306 would be sealed. The furniture removed, the door walled over, all records erased. It would cease to exist. For almost 50 years, it had worked. Until tonight. Sarah looked up from the folder, her face pale. Why didn't anyone tear down that wall? Why didn't they just demolish the room completely? Marcus shook his head. They tried. In 1978, a construction crew came in to do exactly that. They lasted 2 hours. 3 workers quit on the spot, claiming they heard voices telling them to stop. The foreman had a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized for weeks, kept screaming that something was watching them from inside the walls. After that, the owner decided it was safer to leave it alone. As long as the door stayed closed, as long as no one acknowledged its existence, whatever was in there seemed contained. But the phone call is a warning, or maybe a plea. No one knows who's really calling. Some people think it's Richard Alderman's ghost. Others think it's someone or something else. All we know is that when someone receives that call, something is trying to get out. Sarah felt sick. So what do? Nothing. We do absolutely nothing. We don't go near that floor. We don't talk about it. And we definitely don't open that door. But even as Marcus said the words, Sarah knew it wasn't over. The phone call had been too urgent, too desperate. And that knocking she'd heard from inside the wall, that wasn't a warning. That was an invitation. Sarah tried to focus on work for the rest of her shift. She filed paperwork, answered emails, checked in a late arrival. But her eyes kept drifting to that old rotary phone. It sat silent now, but she could swear she saw the dial turning slightly, as if invisible fingers were testing its mechanism. At 3:17 a.m., Marcus left to do his rounds. Sarah was alone in the lobby. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, floor, starting with updating the wiring and plumbing. Sarah tried to warn him. She went to his office, tried to explain about room 306, but the words sounded insane even to her own ears. David listened politely, then patted her shoulder and told her she'd been working too hard. There's no such thing as room 306, Sarah. I've seen the blueprints. That's just wall space. Probably left over from when they reconfigured the floor layout decades ago. Nothing mysterious about it. But the phone call, old wiring, cross signals. This building is ancient. We're going to fix all of that. The construction began on Monday. By Wednesday, the workers had reached the section between rooms 305 and 307. Sarah was off that day, but Marcus called her at 2 p.m. You need to get down here. Now. She arrived to find the third floor in chaos. Police cars were parked outside. An ambulance was loading someone on a stretcher. Marcus met her at the entrance, his face ashen. They found it. The door. They thought it was just drywall, started to tear it down. But behind the first layer was another. And another. 7 layers of wall, Sarah. Each one covered in symbols. The same symbols from the police report. What happened? Who's in the ambulance? The foreman. He got too close. Started tearing down the final layer, and something happened. He started screaming, clawing at his own face. Kept saying something was inside him, that it was looking through his eyes. Sarah pushed past Marcus and ran toward the stairs. She had to see it. Had to know. The third-floor hallway was torn apart. Construction equipment lay scattered. Police tape cordoned off the area around rooms 305 and 307. And there, between them, partially exposed, was the door. It was wooden, old, scarred with age. And carved into its surface were hundreds of symbols. Some she recognized from various occult texts, others completely alien. But what drew her attention was the handle. It was moving, turning slowly from the inside, as if someone was testing it, trying it, learning how it worked. A detective approached her. You work here? We need to ask you some questions about. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. And in that crimson glow, Sarah saw it clearly. The door was opening. Everybody out. Now, Sarah screamed. The detective started to protest, but Marcus grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the stairs. Sarah didn't wait to see if they followed. She ran. Behind her, she heard it. The creak of old hinges. The groan of wood that hadn't moved in decades. And then, a sound like wind rushing through a tunnel, except the wind was made of whispers. Thousands of voices, speaking in languages both ancient and impossible, all blending into a cacophony that made her ears bleed. She made it to the stairwell, slammed through the door, and nearly collided with Marcus and the detective on the second-floor landing. What the hell is happening? The detective demanded. Sarah didn't answer. She pulled out her phone and dialed the front desk. Jessica, the day shift receptionist, answered. Jessica, evacuate the building. Now. Pull the fire alarm. Get everyone out. Sarah, I can't just do it. Now. The fire alarm began to wail. Sarah heard doors opening, confused guests emerging into hallways. She prayed they'd move fast enough. Marcus grabbed her shoulders. What's the plan? We can't just leave it open. I have to close it. Are you insane? You heard what Alderman said. And I also heard what he said about what happens if it stays open. You saw that, foreman. Whatever came through, it's inside him now. How long before it spreads? How long before every person in this building becomes a doorway? The detective's radio crackled. Dispatch was reporting multiple disturbances. Guests on the third floor exhibiting violent behavior. Someone had locked themselves in room 304 and was speaking in a language the responding officers couldn't identify. It was already spreading. Sarah broke free from Marcus and ran back up the stairs. She could hear him shouting behind her, but she didn't stop. She burst through the third-floor stairwell door and into the hallway. The door to room 306 stood open. The room beyond was dark. Not the darkness of an unlit space, but the darkness of absence. A void. It was a darkness that consumed light rather than simply lacking it. And standing in the doorway, backlit by that impossible darkness, was a figure. It was Richard Alderman, or what was left of him. His body was translucent, flickering like a badly tuned television. Parts of him seemed to exist in multiple places at once. His hand was both at his side and reaching toward her, his face both young and ancient, both human and something far more terrible. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice came from everywhere at once. "I couldn't hold it anymore. Help me close it," Sarah said, stepping forward. "We can fix this. Together." Richard's form flickered more violently. "You don't understand. I'm not trying to keep it out anymore. I'm trying to keep it in. And it's already inside me. Has been for 52 years. I'm not the guardian, Sarah. I'm the prisoner. And now, I'm finally free." The darkness behind him surged forward like a living thing. Sarah did the only thing she could think of. She grabbed the door and slammed it shut. The impact sent shockwaves through the building. Every light in the hotel exploded simultaneously. Car alarms wailed in the street outside. And for one brief, terrible moment, Sarah could see through the door, through the walls, through the very fabric of reality itself. She saw the other side. She saw what had been waiting all these years. And she understood why the door had to stay closed. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was lying on the third-floor carpet. Marcus was kneeling beside her, checking her pulse. Paramedics were rushing toward them. "The door," she croaked. "Is it closed?" Marcus nodded, but his expression was grim. "Yeah, it's closed. But Sarah, you need to see this." He helped her to her feet. Her legs were shaky, and her head pounded like someone had struck her with a hammer. But she made herself look. The door was closed. But now, carved into its surface, carved so deep that the wood had splintered and bled sap, were new words. "Knock 3 times when you're ready to come home." And beneath them, a handprint, pressed into the wood as if the door had been soft clay. A handprint that was slowly, imperceptibly, pushing outward from the inside. "We need to seal it again," Sarah said. "Now. Before, we're already on it," a voice said behind her. She turned to find David Chun, the hotel owner, standing with a team of workers. But these weren't ordinary construction workers. They wore robes marked with protective symbols. One of them carried a case filled with bottles of blessed salt, iron filings, and other materials Sarah recognized from occult texts. "You knew," Sarah said. David nodded grimly. "Not at first. But when the foreman started speaking in Enochian and tried to tear out his own eyes, I made some calls. Turns out there's a whole network of people who deal with situations like this. They've been waiting for this day. Knew it would eventually come." One of the robed figures stepped forward. She was elderly, her face lined with age and wisdom. "We'll seal it again. Stronger this time. But you need to understand something, young lady. That door will never truly be closed. What's on the other side wants in. And it's patient. It will wait another 50 years if it has to. Another 100. Eventually, someone will open it again. Then what do? We watch. We ward. And we warn." The old woman pulled out a silver chain with a pendant, the same symbols that had been carved on the door. "You've been marked now. You've seen the other side. That makes you a guardian, whether you want to be or not. I don't understand. Every generation needs someone who knows. Someone who remembers. Someone who will sound the alarm when the door begins to open again. Congratulations, Sarah Mitchell. You're the new keeper of room 306. Over the next 72 hours, the team worked to reseal the room. They didn't just wall it over this time. They performed rituals, laid wards, inscribed protective barriers into the very foundation of the building. When they were finished, the section between rooms 305 and 307 looked completely normal. But Sarah knew better. She could feel it. A constant pressure, like someone watching her from just beyond her peripheral vision. At night, when the hotel grew quiet, she could hear it. Not knocking, not whispers, but breathing. The sound of something patient, something vast, something that existed partially in this world and partially in another. The foreman survived, though he never spoke again. He was institutionalized, catatonic, his eyes forever fixed on something no one else could see. 3 guests who had been on the 3rd floor that day exhibited similar symptoms to varying degrees. The official story was a gas leak. Carbon monoxide. The city bought it. But Sarah knew the truth. Room 306 existed. It would always exist. And someday, someone would try to open it again. The old woman, her name was Margaret, visited once a week to check the wards and teach Sarah what she needed to know. The symbols, the rituals, the signs that the seal was weakening. "Why me?" Sarah asked during one of these sessions. "Why did I get the phone call?" Margaret smiled sadly. Because you were ready to listen. Most people, when confronted with the impossible, they shut down. They rationalize. They forget. But you didn't. You investigated. You cared. That makes you dangerous to what's on the other side, and valuable to us. What if I don't want this? Then walk away. Quit your job. Move to another city. Forget all of this. Margaret paused. But we both know you won't. Because now you know what's at stake. You've seen what will happen if that door opens fully. Could you really live with yourself, knowing you walked away? Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. 6 months later, Sarah still worked the night shift at the Grandview Hotel. The third floor had been reopened after extensive repairs. Guests came and went, blissfully unaware of what lay hidden in the walls between rooms 305 and 307. But Sarah knew. She made her rounds every night at midnight, checking the wards. Most nights, everything was quiet. But sometimes, she would press her ear against the wall and hear it. Knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. And sometimes, late at night, the old rotary phone would ring. She didn't answer it anymore. Margaret had warned her that each conversation made the connection stronger, gave whatever was on the other side more purchase in this reality. But she listened to the messages. They were always the same voice. Richard Alderman's voice. But the words changed. It's beautiful here, Sarah. You should see it. Come see it. The door is so easy to open. Just 3 knocks. That's all it takes. We're waiting for you. We've always been waiting. This is where you belong. Sarah deleted the messages and strengthened the wards. Marcus retired. Too many sleepless nights, too many nightmares. Before he left, he gave Sarah the key to the filing cabinet. Your burden now, he said. God help you. New staff came. Sarah trained them, but she never told them about room 306. The less they knew, the safer they were. The knowledge was a weight she had to carry alone. Except for Margaret. The old woman visited less frequently now. Her health was failing. On her last visit, she gave Sarah a leather-bound journal. Everything I know is in here. Every ward, every ritual, every piece of knowledge I've gathered in 40 years of keeping watch over places like this. When I'm gone, you'll be alone. But you'll have this. What if I can't do it? Sarah whispered. What if I fail? Margaret took her hand. Then you find someone else. Someone brave enough to listen. Someone who won't run. And you pass this burden on, just like I'm passing it to you. We're not trying to win, Sarah. We're just trying to hold the line. 1 generation at a time. Margaret died 3 weeks later. Sarah stood at her funeral, surrounded by strangers who had no idea what the old woman had dedicated her life to. No idea how many doors she had kept sealed, how many thresholds she had guarded. That night, Sarah returned to the Grandview Hotel for her shift. She sat at the front desk, staring at the old rotary phone. At exactly midnight, it rang. She picked it up. Static. Then breathing. Then a voice that was no longer Richard Alderman, no longer even trying to sound human. The watcher is dead. The seal weakens. Soon, we will knock. And you will let us in. No, Sarah said quietly. I won't. A sound like laughter. If laughter could be made of broken glass and screaming. We are patient. We have waited for eons. We can wait a little longer. But you are mortal, little guardian. You will tire. You will weaken. You will forget. And when you do, when I do, someone else will take my place. You're not the only one who's patient. She hung up the phone. Then Sarah pulled out Margaret's journal and began to read. There was so much to learn. So much to prepare for. Because she knew the truth now. Room 306 was just one door. There were others. Scattered across the world. Hidden in hotels, apartment buildings, old houses. Places where the walls between realities wore thin. Places where something hungry waited for an opportunity to break through. And someone had to watch them all. 5 years later, the Grandview Hotel had changed hands again. New owner, new management, new policies. But the night shift position remained. And Sarah remained with it. She was different now. Harder. The job had aged her in. Ways that had nothing to do with years. She'd seen things. Stopped things. There had been close calls. A drunk guest who wandered onto the 3rd floor and almost found the door. A paranormal investigation team that had to be politely but firmly escorted from the premises. But the seal held. On the 5th anniversary of the night she'd first heard Richard Alderman's voice, Sarah made her usual midnight rounds. As she approached the 3rd floor, she felt it before she saw it. The wards were glowing. Not with light, exactly, but with an absence of darkness. They were activating, responding to pressure from the other side. Sarah ran. She burst through the stairwell door and into the hallway. The wall between rooms 305 and 307 was bulging outward. She could hear it now. Not knocking, not whispers, but a sound like reality tearing, like the fabric of space-time being pulled apart, thread by thread. Sarah pulled out her phone, dialed the emergency number Margaret had given her. A network of guardians, scattered across the country, ready to respond when a seal was breached. This is Sarah Mitchell. Grandview Hotel. 3rd floor. The seal is breaking. I need. The wall exploded outward. Plaster and drywall rained down. And there, revealed like a wound in the world, was the door. It stood open. Beyond it, Sarah could see the impossible. A corridor that extended in directions that shouldn't exist. Doors lining the walls, each one opening onto different realities, different dimensions, different hells. And standing in the doorway, backlit by cosmic horror, was a figure. Not Richard Alderman. Someone else. Something else. It stepped into our world, and reality itself seemed to recoil. The lights flickered and died. The temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the walls in patterns that hurt to look at. Sarah grabbed the iron poker she'd started carrying on her rounds. It was inscribed with protective sigils, blessed by 7 different religious traditions. It wouldn't kill whatever this was, but it might slow it down. You cannot hold us, the thing said, and its voice was the sound of civilizations falling. We have waited too long, sacrificed too much. This door was always meant to open, and now, finally, it has. Sarah stood her ground. Then I'll close it again, as many times as it takes. The thing laughed. You are one mortal. Alone. Afraid. What can you possibly? Sarah pressed a button on her phone. Throughout the hotel, hidden speakers activated. The sound that emerged wasn't music. It was a frequency Margaret had discovered, a tone that resonated with the wards themselves, amplifying them. The thing shrieked. It stumbled backward, its form flickering, destabilizing. I'm not alone, Sarah said. I'm never alone. There are hundreds of us. Thousands. Every generation produces new guardians. And we will never stop fighting. Never stop watching. Never stop holding the line. She advanced on the door, poker raised. So go back. Go back to whatever hell spawned you. Tell your masters that this world is protected. Tell them that the door stays closed. The thing retreated into the darkness beyond the door. Sarah grabbed the handle and pulled with all her strength. The door swung shut. The sound of its closing was like a thunderclap. The wards flared bright enough to burn after images into Sarah's vision. And then, silence. She slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Emergency responders would be here soon. She'd have to explain the damage somehow. Another gas leak, maybe. Another structural issue. The lies were getting easier. Her phone rang. Not the hotel phone. Her personal cell. Unknown number. She answered. Is it sealed? A woman's voice asked. For now. Good. We have another situation developing. Chicago. Old apartment building. 3rd floor, room 306. Sarah felt ice in her veins. Room 306. They're always room 306. We think it's significant somehow. A resonance frequency. A pattern in how these things manifest. We're still researching. What do you need me to do? Can you travel? We need someone experienced. Someone who's actually closed a door before. Sarah looked at the sealed wall, at the wards glowing softly in the darkness. The Grandview was stable. Other guardians could watch it for a few days. I'll be on the next flight. She hung up and began walking toward the elevator. As she passed rooms 305 and 307, she paused, pressed her ear against the wall one last time. Silence, but not empty silence. The silence of something waiting, something patient, something that knew, eventually, the door would open again. Because there was always another door, always another room 306, and always, someone had to be watching. The story you've just read is based on reports from hotel employees across the country who have experienced similar phenomena. While names and locations have been changed, the core elements remain the same. Rooms that don't officially exist. Phone calls from impossible sources. Doors that should never be opened. If you work in a hotel, and you receive a midnight call from a room that doesn't exist, listen to the warning. Don't open the door. And whatever you do, never knock.